Welcome to this week's episode. This week we don't have Dad on here, so if you were here for Dad, apologies. We're having a bit of a girls' takeover.
Before we start, I'd also like to add that this was recorded over the internet, so please be understanding of any recording or sound quality issues.
We want to discuss what's been going on in the UK and the UK media. So I'm joined with three of my friends, and if they'd like to introduce themselves, we can start this week's episode.
Hi everyone, thanks for listening to this episode. I'm Antonia. I'm a composer and musician. I lived in London for 3 years, and currently I moved in Glasgow, and at the moment I'm back to my hometown in Cyprus, stuck here due to the pandemic for a while, and yeah.
And I'm Amber, and I grew up in London, and I still live in London, and I am working in a school.
I am Irene. I'm currently in Greece, but I used to live in downtown London for 2 years where I studied, and I am into business management.
Perfect. Thank you, girls. So basically, we are going to be talking about sexual assault and sexual harassment. So I know this can be a sensitive topic. So if you don't want to listen, that's fine. But just a little trigger warning. I wanted to kind of start and ask, you don't have to give a story, but maybe just say yes if you have been sexually harassed or assaulted.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 4 of us here, and we've all said yes. I would say that's a pretty clear reflection of the new UK statistics. About 97% of women in the UK having experienced sexual assault. I just wanted to ask you girls, how did you react when you saw this number?
I was quite surprised, even though it's not surprising that it's high. I was surprised that it was 97%. I thought it was in the 70s. And my boyfriend was actually the one that told me that it was 97% because I hadn't been on my phone that day, the day that it all came out. And I was like, oh no, I think it's 79%. I think you've got that wrong. And then I obviously saw it that evening.
I was actually not surprised. I was like disappointed, but not surprised, Because it's very common.
I was disappointed as well, and quite surprised because, thinking about the UK and the population is a huge percentage. 97%, and especially when we have cities with millions of people, it's thinking mathematically and of the percentages is quite, surprising.
I think I would say, sadly, I wasn't too surprised. Because simply from having conversations like we are now, and everyone says yes, you'd assume that's a clear reflection of the statistics, unfortunately. I don't know if any of you would like to discuss any experiences or stories. That's up to you if you feel up to it.
Yeah, I can go first if you're happy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that actually about the previous question, it's also something to consider what is harass and how you're getting, harassment and stuff like this, and how, you have this point of view, it could be verbally, and how you can understand that this is a harassment. But the story that I can share today, it's something that happened one year ago or something. Actually, I was in my hometown. I went for a walk in a park, like in the national park, and I was by myself. I was just walking, enjoying the nature, And I remember that I heard some footsteps and stuff, and I was like, okay, maybe there's another person here. And then that person came to me, and he was like, you look beautiful. And I was like, I don't want to now talk to someone or something. So I started, trying to walk away, and he actually followed me. And when he saw that, like, there were children and other, people there, he held a bit, he held behind, and then he started following me again. And then I remember that it was the first time that I felt the fear, and I started running and being like, okay, that's not sounding, and it's not looking like safe or good, or, So yeah, I think that was the first time I really experienced the fear of assault and harassment. Like, I was really exposed into that. But yeah, as I said before, I mean, harassment can be verbally as well, and could be like how people are just perceiving sexism as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's really scary.
I mean, just to give the definition of sexual assault and harassment and abuse as well, it includes sexual, physical, verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse. So, of course, any of that, and it's basically any unwelcome actions and behaviours, looks, words, any of that. So that is harassment. It doesn't have to be, the worst case scenario. I think that's something a lot of us learned, maybe growing up, that, hang on a minute, that's not normal. I don't have to be raped to be assaulted or sexually harassed. It could be verbal, or the way someone touched me. So I just wanted to kind of give the definition based on Antonia's story. And I think we can all say we're sorry we went through that, and unfortunately I don't know how many of us have shared similar stories, because I know I have. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else would like to add on to that.
What I would like to say about the definition, because I think when I was about 15 or 16, when something quite bad did actually happen to me, I wouldn't have seen it as sexual harassment or abuse, because I thought that was rape. So any other kind of unwelcome touching I didn't think was sexual harassment. And it's definitely what everyone's saying about how it should be taught in schools and things like that. Like, we just had no idea when we were that age what it actually meant.
Yeah. No, I can agree. I know that when I was about 10, 11, some boys on the school bus used to grope me daily, and I never knew that was wrong.
That's horrible.
And I didn't realise until I was much older that that is sexual harassment.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's necessarily the girls that have to know what it is. I think it's the boys that need to learn to not behave
Yeah,
that way.
definitely.
Everyone needs to be aware of it. Everyone. It's an offense, like, how you're aware of criminal law in the sense of murder and thieves, like, assault or battery, and like robbery or like whatever. You need to be aware of that as well. It's a crime, and that's it. Like, it's not something like, as much taboo someone would say the definition of murder is, so is like the definition of harassment in a legal sense. So everyone needs to be aware of it if they live in a society that is guided by those rules. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say maybe the legal ramifications aren't taught or thought through, because I think if people understood that it's illegal, maybe a lot of people wouldn't actually act that way. I don't know if you agree or not.
I just think it's one of those offenses that it's great gray area, and a lot of interpretation goes into it. So I think even if someone is aware, they can't manipulate the system in their favor. So I think that's why, in a sense, it's not up there with other things.
Would you guys think that that's possibly why a lot of us don't go to authorities? Have any of you ever gone to the authorities for any of these stories?
No.
Not really.
Yeah, I tried to, because mine was actual physical assault. So I was like, I have something. But I didn't try to go to the police. I tried to contact like a lawyer friend of ours that would advise me on how to proceed. And they told me that since you don't know the name of that person and you can only give like a vague physical description, then you can't really do anything.
Wow.
So
That's discouraging.
I tried to, but yeah, a bit. Because I do know that the same night that person attacked two other people.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the same night, like right after. So I was like, yay, that's nice.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. But it's like, at that moment, you feel very helpless and you can't do a lot to stop it. So it's a dead end.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a friend who tried to report something that happened to her and wasn't taken seriously at all. The same kind of thing. You have no name, you have no way of identifying them.
And then that somehow means that it's kind of like it never happened. Whereas if they took these kind of allegations seriously, think of what they could prevent, possibly future assaults or worse.
Exactly.
Which is quite sad. And I think it is a reason a lot of us don't go to any officials, because anytime someone we know or we do, a lot of the time it's very discouraging because we're not taken seriously.
I think also it's something that we need to think how rape and how sexual assault is actually embodied in our societies. And I'm telling that after having a lot of thoughts, and with the movement of Me Too movement in Greece, especially, which is something fresh in my mind at the moment, and something that also happened after Greek, news and stuff happening in Cyprus. So I think it's how embodied the rape and the sexual assault is in the society, and how people realize that, and how people act when someone shares a story, or when someone, just speaks up. And yeah.
Would you say it's around how we've embodied this kind of rape culture in society, if you will? To give it a name.
I think so, yeah. And it's, I can see that there's a relationship, obviously, with sexism and toxic masculinity, I can say. And something that I also have fresh in my mind is sex trafficking and sexual assault, that, and when we're trying to think of that a coin has two sides. So
what you're saying has made me think of maybe the sex industry in general, or I'd say the porn industry, for example, the way it makes maybe misconceptions about what consent is, or what men and young men see, and how they get misconstrued ideas, if that makes sense.
Young boys can't really, realize that some acts or some, some actions of them are causing assault or, you know.
So I think I kind of wonder, where do you think this is coming from? You know, these ideas. Is it from the media? Is it from the porn industry? Is it from the family? Is it from the lack of education? Is it from the music industry? Is it from celebrities not being held accountable? Is it for the way things are worded in articles?
All of it.
All of the above.
Yeah, it's a combination of all of the above. And I know some cases actually that they come straight from family and no much education about specific, stuff, and how people were, supported to do stuff like this, and and how they can't really understand that this might be something else or may take a different, direction.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
So maybe young boys aren't told that this is wrong.
Yeah, basically I was actually having a discussion with a friend about that couple months ago. And I was trying to explain to him that, maybe this is not just, about pleasure, but it's also something that has some ethics in it, or maybe some moral background, or maybe something else that we don't really see in the surface and has, a lot of stuff going on in the background. And I think it's also the lack of wanting to understand in a way, or wanting to listen to something different, to what's there, that it's different than of their opinion.
Yeah, and I think our opinions are hard to change in general, like about anything, and the way that people have been brought up is always going to affect them. And I know that a lot of my friends have been trying to have these conversations since what happened this week with the men in their life, and the men are just refusing to listen to what they're saying. They're fixated on this giving men a bad name idea. Instead of listening to what women are saying, they're being defensive and obviously don't want their opinions changed.
I also think it's really important to avoid the blame game. Like right now in the conversations that are sparked and all that, I think it's kind of important to avoid the generalizations and all that, because I do get the sense that our generation is trying a bit harder, and it's good to find like the stem of the problem, which I think is a combination of like the media obviously words things in ways that's not favorable, society, and phrases like boys will be boys, or locker room talk, which like we heard in like the US election 4 or 5 years ago, which was like a prominent thing that, this is how men or guys behave and talk, and those excuses. But I do think that in order to have a conversation, we need to not just pass blame, but, kind of work together towards something. Because I do understand in a way, like, I'm trying, and I do want to understand that, some guys may be totally unaware of that just because of the lack of education, like be ignorant in a way towards that, but not because they're mean-spirited or, whatever. It's just like they don't know what's going on. And I had some conversation with some friends from school, and they were asking me, please tell us, because we have no idea, and we had no idea because no one told us. So I think like media, society, and education is like the main reasons why there's this whole confusion surrounding these topics.
So maybe ignorance is bliss for some people, and they'd rather stay ignorant than be troubled with all these issues.
Definitely, but also I don't want to blame someone for being ignorant because no one has pushed them to not be ignorant. Because I also understand in a way that people are not mean-spirited, and I want to believe in the good in them. And I just want to say that maybe it's time to push people to not be ignorant. Look past the blame game and push people to not be ignorant.
I think that Irene has a really good point on what she mentioned. I believe that there are people that they don't really know that, what is happening in the real life or in the real world. So, I think it's a really good idea to talk with people, with friends, with family, or, just even sharing in your Instagram account stuff that can push people to learn more and, in a way, access information.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that I don't say this with minimizing all of the things have been said. I do agree that, we have been excusing a lot of behavior that we shouldn't be excusing, and there's definitely a problem, but I just am trying really hard to see it with a more cooperative way, and trying to find whatever good there's left. And in that way, I'm not trying to minimize anyone and any experiences when I say that I excuse in a way someone's ignorance. So just wanted to say that.
No, I think it's a good point that in order to help someone be less ignorant or become less ignorant, you have to understand their point of view.
And it leads me to wonder to what extent, yes, people are having conversations, but to what extent maybe we need bigger facilitators in this, whether it be the government, whether it be the educational system, whether it be, something bigger than individual women campaigning all the time, or, because someone who doesn't care about this issue isn't going to listen to a podcast about feminism necessarily. They're not going to read a book about it. It's not in their interest. So you somehow need to incorporate this education and knowledge into stuff that people will see or hear.
Definitely. Make it mainstream.
Sex ed in schools.
Yeah, I was never taught about sexual assault in school. Were you?
I don't think so.
Not even about consent or anything.
I was taught in a way, but this also depends on the teacher as well, I think. It depends on the educational system and staff. I don't know. And I think on the individual, basically, how they are gonna transform the education and some ideas or thoughts, and how you're going to discuss them later in the class in a way.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I actually had a subject called citizenship. I don't know if anyone else had something similar. It's like PSHE, and I did have a really good teacher for that, and she did do a whole lesson about consent with obviously all the girls and all the boys in the same class, teaching them about consent. And I remember her saying, if someone doesn't say yes, then it's a no. And we were in year 9, so about 14. So I think that was a good age to have covered that topic.
I would say my first kind of topic of consent was, do you remember those YouTube videos that were like about tea, that said, you know, if someone doesn't say yes to tea, they don't necessarily want tea. Or if someone is too intoxicated to say yes, then that means no. I don't know if anyone else remembers that.
No, I don't remember that.
Actually, they did something in Cyprus similar, but with souvlaki, which is something that many Cypriots eat, and Greeks as well. So they were like, if you want souvlaki, then you must say yes or no, which is quite ridiculous. But I think it's a way to people that, you know, to access, you know, like an access for people that.
Yeah, make it accessible.
Yeah, make it accessible.
But not saying the words that you're talking about, I think, is one of the issues, that we don't say the words consent. We don't say the words, have sex. We don't acknowledge that young people do that from a young age, and we're kind of trying to hide it instead of educate them about it, which I think also has a wheelbarrow effect of a domino effect of having people hiding experiences because of taboo subjects that we don't express as we should, and we use metaphor like souvlaki or tea or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. You know, you could say touching or sex or texting or flirting or whatever. You could be quite literal with it. I would have to agree, I think. Since we're kind of heading in that direction, I was wondering if you guys have any possible solutions. I know it might seem quite broad, but any ideas of what you think a solution is, if there is such a thing?
I think it's gonna take a lot of time to actually start solving this, because we need to reprioritize some things in our society and in our education systems and in the way we view people and those issues. And I think that is so rooted in our society that, so sexism and seeing some issues as very taboo and very scandalous in a way, even though it's something so common, like 97%. But so I think it's going to take a lot of time, and I would really like to see governments start addressing those issues.
I think that as a solution, maybe it would be nice, I can say, not good, but nice to have some chat with friends or people from our bubbles and trying them to make them aware of what is happening and what is going on, and share stories, share stuff that is happening in other countries that we had no idea, and make people familiar with this. But at the same time, I'm thinking that it's also something that it's really personal. I mean, in the sense that an individual has to do something by its own, like go and read stuff or learn stuff. And I don't know if that sounds quite vague, but I think it's also like a choice that you have to do it. Like if you want to be aware of that, you should go.
I think for all the bad things you can say about social media is such a good way to do that, because people don't go out and look for it. It comes up on their feed and they see it and they share it. And the amount of men and boys that I've seen over the past few days share something on their story about what they can do to help, and they clearly found it useful because they've shared it and they've thought other men can see this too, and learn something from it, and it might be something that they never would have clicked on if their friend hadn't shared it or something.
I just wanted to comment on what Amber's just said. Actually, I agree with this, and I was quite surprised. The other day, I was on my Instagram, just checking, my Instagram stories and stuff like this, and I saw a story by a friend. I knew he wasn't really aware of that kind of stuff, like assault and sexual harassment, and and I saw like a story he shared that he was starting to be aware of stuff, and I felt quite nice, and at the same time I was quite weird, having mixed feelings, like, okay, something's good is happening, but is it though? Like, is it true? But I mean, sharing stuff on media is a new way to do, to inform people, maybe.
So basically, just to kind of sum up all the possible solutions we've just talked about, we talked about government taking initiatives. We spoke about talking to friends, family, peers, and having these possibly uncomfortable conversations. We've spoken about using the power of social media and getting the kind of information and message out there. And I would have to agree with you and kind of add my idea, which was that we do need men. As much as I am a feminist and, we're all independent women who don't need a man and what have you, I think it's an issue that isn't just for us anymore. I think we need them to educate their own and start understanding themselves, because it's mainly men harassing women, not women harassing women. So yeah, I would say I think it will be nice to see men and boys do something about this.
Yeah.
In one form or another. Whether it be, I think a lot of us have stories of guys telling us stories of questionable behaviors from their friends. And I always used to think, okay, why don't you do something about this? Why are you telling me? Are you asking me to tell you if that's assault and harassment? Do you not understand that it's making you uncomfortable and that maybe you can report your friend rather than putting it on the girl to report your friend? Or you tell your friend that, hey, if you don't stop doing this, I will report you, or what you're doing is this and that.
Yeah, I have an older brother, so I sometimes get to see the other point of view, and like I haven't noticed them, thankfully, anytime like excusing behavior that's questionable. Like that's just my experience, but I know that they don't openly talk about those things. And I was seeing those posts, like what we're saying about social media to connect it, which like they really hit home. Like when I read that, I was like, oh my God. It's like those posts that say, what do men do to not be sexually harassed, and what do women do? And it's like, the keys, the earphones, the shoes, crossing the street, crossing busy roads, all that. And then like in the other list, like there's nothing. And I think that is very important that now men know that we have to go through all of this daily to go back to our house. Whereas like they're so unaware of that. Like try and start to recognize like those things. So if they walking down the street and they see a girl that like starts pacing faster because they think someone's following them, or like if you see a girl holding her keys in her fists because she thinks you're a potential target, maybe stop there and just think like, okay, I'll just back a bit up, or like, start recognizing those patterns now that you're aware of them is also part of men doing something about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Or, if there's a group of guys and there's one guy whistling, why don't the rest tell him to shut up? I'm sure they don't all agree with this behavior. Or, in the club, you see one guy who's flirting with a girl and she's visibly uncomfortable, or touching a girl. That guy's probably there with friends. Do they not have anything to say about this kind of behavior? Are they enabling it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also about pressure. If we can think about peer pressuring and how boys especially, think about peer pressure and having the courage to do something that is not what, something that is not what they are doing in general with their friends.
Not conformative. I think that's especially a big part of toxic masculinity is, going against what your bros are doing or what your mates are doing is actually quite difficult for guys, I think. But someone's going to have to start doing it for these numbers to go down, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd say kind of overall, I guess the main kind of solution we've discussed in different forms would be education, whether it be through conversation, whether it be through bigger systems like the government, whether it be through social media. I'd say that's the key word. I don't know if you girls agree.
Yeah. Fruitful, conversations about listening to one another, and not attacking or anything, just everyone needs to listen to everyone. I think that's a point where social media is not enough. It's a bit impersonal and some things can be miscommunicated. So I think, have conversation with the people next to you, the people your sisters, your cousins, your friends, your mother is even anyone who has something to say, you should listen and then filter that.
Yeah, and I think that you should be open to listening to other people, and you should be open to new stuff and to the idea of feminism. And, I came across boys that they say I'm not a feminist because feminism is just for women, which is something that we already covered, I think. We mentioned a little bit before.
Yeah, I think it's a misconception that feminism is against men and it's all about women, and it's actually quite the opposite. It benefits men and it's not hating on men. I think people just need to get over that kind of narrative that being a feminist means you hate men, which is just silly at this point. I just think, if you still believe that's the narrative, you clearly haven't read enough or heard enough or talked enough, and that's what you should be doing. I was kind of wanting to ask if you guys have any advice for women and victims. Victims can be men as well, as we know, but fortunately or unfortunately, they do have a certain privilege to have lower numbers than women. So I was just wondering whether you guys have any advice for sexual assault or harassment victims that you'd like to share.
I think the first thing that someone needs to do is to acknowledge it and accept it. And then maybe, and then talk about it, speak up, to your people, to your bubble, maybe, or even go and, go to the police or someone who can help, because I don't think that sometimes police is the is the place to go, but especially with what is going on around the world. But yeah, to someone who can help, like authority wise, or yeah.
I mean, I guess that could depend on where the assault happened. So if it's in your workplace, a lot of workplace have offices for that. A lot of schools, go to someone higher up when and if you're ready. That's, I think, quite valid. And as you said, to acknowledge it and maybe, take some time to deal with it and understand it.
Yeah, I think being kind to yourself and not putting pressure on yourself to say something straight away, because it does take such a long time to actually realise what's happened and process it. Even, like I said, even if you don't realise at the time that it is sexual assault and harassment, then when you do realise it, then you have to come to terms with that. And yeah, I think being kind to yourself.
Yeah, and saying to yourself that you're not paranoid. You're not paranoid, you're not crazy. What you're feeling is valid. I think that's very important. That was my biggest thing, that I felt like everyone else, was looking at me like I was crazy, but no one actually did. It's all in your head. And instead of being paranoid, do what Antonia said, whenever you're ready, find someone, like a therapist or a friend, and, open up to them.
Yeah. I think I would agree with everything you guys said. I think one of the initial responses is sometimes not realizing what happened, especially if you're young. You might not realize until years later. But also, I think a lot of us go into this kind of state of saying, I'm just being dramatic. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I misinterpreted. And I think that obviously worsens when someone else says that to you and kind of invalidates your experience. So I would say, one of the first things being trust yourself on how you felt. If you felt uncomfortable, if you felt scared, if you felt violated, then your experience is valid and that's it. Even if someone doesn't understand that, it's your truth and it's true no matter who believes you and who doesn't. And yeah, seek help when you're ready. And I don't know if you guys I think the same applies to if you know a friend who's been hurt in any way. I can say that, for example, Amber and the friend group that we were kind of in, when I was going through something, they were the ones to actually tell me, we think you should go and talk to someone about this and seek help. I wouldn't have done it myself. So I think, having friends and speaking with friends can be very enlightening, because I didn't understand I was being harassed at the time until they kind of told me, and then a professional told me. And I was like, oh, okay, I understand now.
And also not being scared to actually ask your friends to go with you, because that's what you did, and we were completely more than happy to do it. It's not an inconvenience to your friends.
I just wanted to say I'm so thankful to my friends who would always answer the phone when I would call them, because I was walking home alone and I was really scared. And I mean, those people, I'm so thankful to them, that they were accepting the fact that I needed someone to be on the phone, because or else I would be so nervous and so fearful of something that might happen. And thank you to our nice friends. That's just a small thing I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something. I think that we tend to forget that in cases of physical sexual abuses, it's always good to go to a doctor or to the NHS and check for your actual health, like, and in terms of if you want then to move, to something more serious like with a lawyer or something, you can have actually proofs. So it's something that we as women need to consider and have it in the back of our minds.
Yeah, as difficult as it is, I think that is quite important. Like, I know we did say that, it can take time, but if there's physical assault and sexual assault, then that is very true that you should go to a doctor, A, to check your health out, and B, because then if you do choose to file a report, unfortunately, a lot of the time, the cases are not taken seriously without that kind of physical evidence. So I'd say that's a very important point as well. And I guess I quite like I think a lot of us have this kind of sense of sisterhood and allyship between us. So I think any of us would believe each other and be there for each other immediately, which, again, I think just shows how common it is and how, I'd believe anyone that told me something happened and say, yeah, okay, I'm there if you need it, or how can I help? Yeah, as you guys all kind of said.
I think we should always also mention what is very prominently stated on those posts about the victim from London, that she did everything supposedly right, and she still got that, still that happened to her. And that it's important to say that it's not anymore a matter of wearing comfortable shoes, talking to your friends, sharing your location and all that, but it's beyond that, and it's not preventable anymore. So that's also I think something we should mention, that even...
Yeah, I think we all know the measures at this point, how to look after ourselves, and it's kind of beyond that. It's not up to us anymore, I don't think, to look after ourselves. I think there has to be, I don't know if you guys saw someone from the Green Party, kind of sarcastically, obviously not saying it seriously, said, oh, we should impose a 6 p.m. curfew for men. Which
I like that idea.
Which I thought was quite funny, but it was kind of indicating that, well, that's a solution to the problem. No one's giving a solution. I'm giving you a somewhat radical one, but I'm showing you that action needs to be taken to make women feel safe.
Yeah, and also referring to the idea of how ridiculous it was when women were afraid in Yorkshire of the Yorkshire Ripper and they were told to just not leave the house. It's not something you can tell people to do.
Just put the efforts in catching him.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's just so scary now because, there's really nothing you can't do to prevent it. This is in my mind so much after what I read about what happened in London. And it's the fact that, I used to cross those streets and I used to take all those measures, and it could have been me. And, there's nothing anyone could have done to prevent that.
No. Even...
That's so scary.
I remember a time where women were told to not have their hair in a certain way because men could grab it. Not have it in a ponytail because they could pull you back. What? What difference does it make?
Yeah.
What do we have to all have whistles and alarms with us? As if anyone's going to hear that. Do you have to have pepper spray on you all the time? Or...
Which isn't even legal in the UK.
Yeah, it's not legal.
Actually, about the whistle thing, my mom actually was telling me, she was studying in Kent back in the 80s, and she was telling me that she was always carrying a whistle because she had to cross a really small street that was going into like a forest in her campus, and then
Oh, really?
in order to get to her accommodation, like university accommodation, and she was telling me that she was carrying a whistle, and everyone was carrying a whistle. I mean, I was shocked about that.
Yeah, you kind of don't think of your mum to have to go through that as well, do you? You know, I don't know what difference it makes, but it affects you more thinking about that being your mum.
I think we all have our own preventative measures that we all do all the time. And I think one of them that I think guys make fun of is us girls going everywhere together, you know, whether it be the toilet. No one gets left behind. We all know who's going home with who.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks it's become a kind of running joke, I think, for guys, because they don't do the same. And it's like, well, if I don't, then how can I know my friends are safe? If my friends don't know
Exactly.
where I
You're not going to wait until the morning to find out that they got home okay. That's too late.
Exactly. And again, I think that just shows how, I guess maybe it's bad things that have led women to become so linked and have this kind of sense of sisterhood, which I personally love about women.
Yeah, and allyship.
From bad experiences, but I think it's lovely, and I'm very grateful to have lots of friends who are women and feel the same way. And you girls
Yeah.
talking about these kind of issues and sharing with us. But yeah, I think we've gone over time. I don't know if anyone else would have anything else to add.
Stay safe.
Thank you so much for coming. I do want to just add that I do have links to helplines in Instagram bio, and I'll add them again into the link of this podcast, wherever you're listening to it. So if you need any help, it's out there. And yeah, thank you for listening. Please discuss these kind of issues. And yeah, thank you girls for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.